So we've been thinking it would be a good idea to do sort of a catch-up video on the cabin, give you a snapshot of what it took to get here to this point, and also maybe touch on why we're doing this. So I'll start with a beer. So my Homestead Hooch. It's a long hot day, now it's raining. Raspberry ale, can't beat it. Why did we start building this cabin? Well, a couple of main reasons. One, when I was 17 years old, that's when I moved to Alaska, and my father worked for the Forest Service in Fairbanks, and he had bought a piece of land 30 miles north of Fairbanks, off-grid, off the road system. He promptly put me to work helping him build a pretty large 2-story log cabin, and we worked on that for two years pretty much solid, right through the winter. 45 below zero, it didn't matter. We were out there putting up logs. I will never do that again. It was at the time, it was a miserable experience, but looking back on it, some 40 years ago, I have fond memories of it, and we have a son who's almost 17 years old, and I undertook this a few years ago because I wanted him and I to have that same kind of experience together, so that 40 years from now he has those same memories. Sometimes it's miserable, but he's learned a lot about building. He's helped me figure out a lot, because I am not a builder. I'm just I'm a mechanic by trade, aircraft mechanic, but I've never been a construction worker of any kind. I've built a few things, nothing bigger than a shed. So I'm just figuring this out as I go along. He's figuring it out with me. I have been able to teach him what I do know, and along the way he's learned how to operate all-terrain vehicles, tractor, loader, backhoe, and chainsaws. I was a safety director also for an airline, so I've tried to instill in him, practicing safe work practices out here, because we're 170 miles from the hospital, so even a minor injury out here can mean a long car ride. So that's part of the why, is to share that experience with my son and my wife. She enjoys coming out here helping. Another part of the why is, in this day and age, in this country, housing has shot through the roof in the last couple of years. It's really nuts. I really feel sorry for young people nowadays who are just starting out. It'll be such a struggle for them to actually own a house someday. My wife and I have owned a couple of houses, and they do tend to, it gives you a sort of a false sense of security, but in reality, you're really just renting it from the bank and the taxing authority. Even if you pay cash for the house, you still don't really own it, because there's property tax to be paid. So we picked out this piece of land out here, as I said, 170 miles from Home Depot, hospital, Walmart, 200 miles from a Costco. We're in interior Alaska, and in this part of the state there is no property tax. So we could build a mansion here and no property tax. That's a big advantage. Of course, the disadvantage, some people might say, is that you don't have government services, but I really don't know what government services you get from local governments that we don't. We have the Alaska State Troopers will respond here. We have Alaska Division of Forestry for fires. We have a volunteer fire department in the area. We're on the road system, a little country dirt road, but it's maintained by the state of Alaska. There's mail service right to the end of the driveway, school bus service. I really just don't know what we're missing in terms of government services. But the last house we owned, we paid $350 a month for property tax, which just didn't make any sense to me. But anyway, the long story short is one of the reasons we're doing this is to have a place that is mortgage free and as tax free as possible, that we own outright. We're paying as we go for materials, and when the cabin is finished, it'll be a free place to live and it's paid for. That's reason number 2, and that's a big reason. This. A little bit about how we got to this point is 5 years ago we purchased the property, and as I ramble on, I'll intersperse some photos and video shots of the process, and of getting to this point. I'll just overlay those while I blab. But we spent the first 2 years clearing for a driveway. It's 10 acres, and I didn't want to put the house on the edge of the property next to the road. I put the house or the cabin, everything we're doing here is right in the middle of 10 acres. So it took about a 600-foot circular driveway to get good access to the property. So the first 2 years we're trying to get a driveway and a cabin area cleared and some parking areas cleared of the trees. It's very thick. This is pretty much virgin boreal forest. It's called spruce, mostly spruce trees. And so it's a lot of work just cutting down trees, and when you cut down 3 trees, it'll take you a long time just to pick them up. Cutting them down is the easy part. Picking them up is the hard part. So 2 years of trying to get a driveway put in. Then 3 years ago we started building on the cabin, and first summer I think we got the walls, the foundation, flooring, and walls framed up. The following year we got the loft put in and finished sheathing the walls. There's some timber work that had to be done on the front porch. The front part of the cabin is supported by some I think they're 8x8 timbers. So that was year number 2. Year number 3 is basically the roof, and that's where we're at now. We've got the roof structure up, and we sheathed it kind of a different way than what modern building techniques do. We've sheathed it with 2x6 planks because we wanted to have the look of we wanted to see the rafters and the planks from the inside of the cabin, going for sort of an old style barn look, or warehouse look maybe. Just doing an outside walk around. Basically we started the floor structure. I wanted it to I didn't want any support in the middle of the cabin, because in case the ground moves with freezing and thawing, I want to be able to adjust it easily. I don't want to have to crawl under the cabin to add shims. So everything rests on some huge beams I built up. The floor joists have to span the 16 feet. It's a 16 feet wide cabin. 16 by 20 is the heated space, and then there's an 8-foot porch on it. So I had to span across with 2x12s in order to give it a nice rigid floor structure. We've got R30 insulation in the floor, screen over the insulation to keep the squirrels out, because they will carry your insulation away. Notice the squirrel trap. We do get rid of some squirrels around here. We typically just take them down the road and let them loose, but they are a pain in the butt sometimes. And you can see that these are just concrete piers resting on top of the gravel. At some point, once I'm finished adjusting them, I will, adding shims and such, I'll bolt those down and attach the piers to the actual beams. There will be a large window on the back side. This is the south side. This is some scaffolding that I'm working on to get up to the extremely steep roof. So as you can see, the foundation just rests on a bed of gravel that's been packed down by tractors and dozers. I am going to expand the gravel pad another 10 or 12 feet out, because I'm noticing it's kind of slumping away from the foundation piers, and I don't want them to start sinking. There's one window. You have to excuse the mess. It's, you know, building a little cabin out here in the middle of nowhere it's a messy process, like making sausage. But eventually it'll be nice. This will all get landscaped, at least a little bit, not overly landscaped. We even have a pond right over here, which we hope to clean up someday and make it presentable. My son and I built those brackets that hold the timbers together just by cutting steel and welding it together. I think they turned out nice. It gives it sort of a Scandinavian or Viking look, I think. This is all going to get graveled out here too. We're going to build this up to the steps. A lot of this is temporary scaffolding. This will be taken out. That's just there to help us build. This section over here is a loft, so those beams will stay there overhead. Up there will be a large sleeping loft, and this overhead here will go away, so that you'll see when you come in the door, you'll see the ceiling. And what we've done is we've sheathed it not with plywood but with 2x6s, which was extremely labor intensive and pretty damn expensive. But the look is what I was going for. I'm going for like a barn or an old style building look. So we even stained these 2x6s before they went up there, so we don't have any overhead work to do once we complete the roof. All the insulation and this roofing sheet metal goes on from on top of this. So this is what we will see from inside the building. I think it's going to look pretty cool. And that half, that's the back half of the building there. That's going to be a sleeping loft. It's 16 feet wide by about 10 feet long. Again, this is the deck, the temporary scaffolding that will be taken out once the building's done. This is a temporary scaffolding for just so we can build out here, you know, the roof and the structure. That's going to be removed as well, but I think in the future I'm going to put a proper permanent deck out here to just make a nice little a hangout outside, and maybe even screen it in. We've got beautiful mountains in that direction if I ever clear enough trees, so you could sit out here on this porch and look at some 15,000 foot mountains not too far away. But for now, this is just a temporary deck that will go away until we do it with a proper deck. This is just a temporary ladder for getting up and down. I think that the permanent ladder is going to go up in the middle of the cabin. It just makes more sense, gives you headroom. When you get to the top of this one, you're bunking your head on the rafters. So as you can see, there's windows we haven't cut out yet. I think we're going to leave some of them, like the wood stove is going to go here, we think. So I think we're going to leave this window solid and not put a window in there. That gives you a place to hang coats and have a firewood box. I think the window on the front will be enough. Every time you open up a window, you close off some use of your wall space. That quarter of the cabin under the loft will be a decent little kitchen or kitchenette, as large as you can have in a 16 by 20 cabin. This large window here is a south-facing window, so that alone in the spring might even heat this cabin up if we insulate it well enough. It's 2x6 framed on 2-foot centers, so we should be able to insulate it pretty well. the game plan for the floor, it's already got R30 insulation under this decking, but I'm going to put down foam on top of the decking, and then put some sort of flooring on top of that. That way it'll make a nice warm floor on those cold winter mornings. 2x material, or any framing material, transfers heat or cold. They call it thermal bridging. But so if you just put a piece of sheetrock here, this 2x material will transfer the cold in or the heat out, and it makes for cold spots. So on a floor, if you put a little foam down, just even a thin layer, it breaks the thermal bridge, and you won't have cold spots on the floor from the framing material. Then out here, of course, is the porch, which is pretty much already finished. It's our only usable room in the house so far. So that's where it's at. We hope to have this thing dried in this summer. Once the roof is done, the progress will pick back up pretty quick. We'll be doing house wrap on the outside, and then installing windows and doors. I don't know if we'll get to that this summer, but we're hoping to. Summer goes by really fast. Here we get about 90 days of potential summer weather. So once I get windows and doors in, the thing is actually dried in, and then we can start working on the inside, and maybe even get it heatable. But I don't really have high hopes for that, because the roof is going to take all summer, I'm pretty sure. It's, I fully expected this. If I had this to do over again, I would not do a 45-degree angle or a 12-12 pitch roof. It just makes things so much more difficult. Now, I've spent the last few days building a scaffold system just so I can get up to the eave of the house to start putting the products on top of the house. We're doing this where we've put the sheathing down on the rafters, and then on top of that is going to go 3 layers of 2-inch foam, or 6 inches of foam. There's going to be a waterproof membrane first, but then on top of the foam is going to be some strapping with 2x4s, and then on top of that will be sheet metal. So we got a long way to go on this roof, and the rest of it is going to be on top of the roof. So one thing I've learned, if someone has the dream of building a cabin, whether it's coming to Alaska or doing it somewhere else, make sure that is the dream, because the trade-off for building this cabin is we have spent the last 5 summers building on the cabin. We used to go all over the state. We have a little camper trailer. We used to go all over the state, fly fishing, hunting, just doing stuff, gold panning, tons of stuff to do in this state in the summertime, and there's never enough time to do all of it because the summers are so short. But for the last 5 years, we have done very little of that because we're so busy trying to get this cabin done with the few days of usable, workable weather that we get. So keep that in mind. If you want to build a cabin by all means. If you just want a cabin, save up and buy one, to be honest. Then you can start enjoying the cabin. That may be the way to go. In my case, as I said, my motivation was to share the experience of building it with my son. And I think in the long run, we're going to look back on this as a positive experience. But let me say, it is a labor of love, heavy emphasis on the word labor. So that's the cabin in a nutshell, why we're doing it and how we're doing it. Wanted to ask you to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And feel free to run down to the comments section and post any questions, comments, suggestions. I try to respond to those when I get back to town. And hit the like button while you're at it. And if you know somebody else that's taking on a project or thinking about doing something like this, share this video with them. It's starting to rain, so I'm going to head in, and I'm almost out of my beer. So I'm going to head into the camper, get a shower, and just wanted to say thank you for hanging out with me in far out Alaska.